So welcome everyone. I'm very excited. This is our first of our webinar series talking about gig CX, your remote workforce, and really just contact centers in general and some best practices around that. So with us today, we've got Nick Ngati and Fernando Faria, and I will let both of them introduce themselves. I'm Courtney Meyers. I'm the co-CEO here at Omni, and again, very excited to be hosting and joining you all on this initial webinar. So, Nick, do you want to do a quick introduction?
Sure. Good to meet everyone. Nick Ngati, I'm Vice President of Digital Engagement Enterprise Security for Omni, and excited to be here and talk about kind of some of the things we do and how we do it and how it enables business.
Excellent. Fernando?
Thanks, Courtney. Hi, everyone. My name is Fernando Faria. I'm the CMO of Thinscale Technology, one of the partners of Omni Interactions, and I'm excited to be here talking to you about securing BYOD.
Excellent. So just to kind of kick us off before I turn it over to Nick, so today we're going to be talking about really what does it look like to secure your contact center, and this really is a broad picture for us. And at Omni, we take fraud prevention and security very seriously. And for us, it starts right at the beginning of when we start sourcing our agents, and then it's a continuous series of partners, tools, security checks, et cetera, all the way through to production and securing the desktop, which is where Thinscale is our partner. But before we jump into the Thinscale portion and what that looks like from a security standpoint and the role that plays in our overall approach, I want to have Nick kind of just give everyone the high level on what does this mean at a holistic level, and how do we approach fraud prevention for our clients as it relates to both our agents and the workplace that they work in. So, Nick, do you want to kind of give everyone a high level?
Yeah, absolutely. As Courtney said, it's we try to start from the very beginning. It starts really with posting of opportunities, and from there we start screening based on location, systems, system checks, speed checks, which are important pieces in putting all this together. It goes through to identity verification, biometrics. We use biometric tools to make sure that who's working on the other end, and then we do facial recognition matches to identification. We compare it against databases to make sure that that's really who they are. Background check process. We match those data points across. We use there's a whole host of tools and vendors we use in this process to get there, that we leverage to get the best data and get the best information. We use location checks, and that's all before we onboard that agent into the Omni platform. Once we've moved them past that point, and we've assigned them to a project or a program they're going to work on, then we start setting up all the other controls. It's identity management through central authentication, MFA. We use GeoIP location. We set up multi-factor against their device, mobile device, that we can then validate locations on that, make sure they're working where they say they're at. If they work somewhere else, or they attempt to work somewhere else, we have controls in place to mitigate that. We have a whole host of conditional access rules that we rely on, that they've got to meet these checks. And then it's using tools like Thinscale, and Thinscale's that piece comes into how we secure that endpoint. So they bring their own device, it's their own workstation at home. It ensures a handful of things. We don't want them using wireless networks and different things, and so Thinscale actually helps us enforce those rules and provides data back to us on that. It locks them out of their host OS, and I don't want to take all Fernando's points here, but it just is another tool that provides us that level of security. So we can, at the end of the day, when we provide services, we know who's working, where they're working from, what system they're on. We can ensure a level of security around that device. They're not able to copy and paste data in and out of the virtual workstation. They can't print to a local machine. They can't connect to their local network other than to get out to connect to the Omni data centers. So we can control that whole process and workflow.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of summarize that, for us at Omni, it's four fundamental principles. It's um, are they who they say they are? And so to confirm that, and this is a challenge in at this point any contact center because the identities, the stolen identities have run rampant, right? And so that's something we've seen all in every context, right? I mean, this was a huge challenge with unemployment claims during COVID. You can simply buy an identity online. You can use your cousins, your sisters, et cetera. So we've taken that first step very seriously, and we actually use a KYC compliant identity verification solution, which is the same. It's a banking standard, the same standard if you were to go open an online bank account. So that's step one for us. Are they who they say they are? And so they go through that KYC identity verification. Step two is, are they where they say they are? So we want to know that when someone is going to be working for Omni, that they are where they say they are. This is very important, right? They're not somewhere else. They're not they're in that office that they've committed to. They're that secure office. And so we use a tool, a LexisNexis tool that helps us really look at location masking. It basically does a deep dive on the computer itself and the digital footprint for that agent. And it helps us not only understand where they are, but does that digital footprint have any previous fraud associated with it? So LexisNexis actually runs that digital footprint through their database and says, hey, and it actually gives us a fraud or a risk score associated with that digital footprint. So that helps us with location masking, VPN use, as well as just looking at that digital footprint. The third is the person a good actor, right? So then we do the full, of course, comprehensive background check on all of our agents, depending on client requirements. And then the fourth is, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? And that is where Thinscale comes in, right? To help us lock down that work environment. So we know that, everyone who's logging into the Omni environment is secure. And then, of course, as Nick mentioned, we have a whole nother layer of security around, MFA and other points we check for kind of in our own infra environment when someone is on board and working for our clients. So I think that's kind of the high level. And unless either Nick or Fernando, you guys have anything to add, I vote we jump into Thinscale and all the exciting things that piece does for us.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of things that Nick mentioned there that I'll be touching upon and going a little bit more detail. So happy to jump in.
Perfect.
All right. Fernando, do you want to kick us off with?
Yeah, so let's start with, so the key model here, the GigCX model, and I wanted to cover a little bit of the unique security challenges that we see IT teams facing. So GigCX is built around, as Dick mentioned, BYOD, bring your own device. That's when agents will use their personal machines to perform the job, to access corporate resources and to work there for their clients. That intrinsically in the IT world is considered an untrusted device. So a device that isn't corporate locked down, it is not corporate managed by the central IT team. So that's a challenge because obviously they will be accessing personal data and corporate resources on an unsecure device. On the other hand, you have the challenge of speed for onboarding and speed of onboarding and offboarding an agent. So finding the balance between ensuring the highest level of security and that speed of execution. So in terms of security, I'm talking about access policies, shipping updates, enforcing data encryption, restrictions of USB storage devices, and so on. And then on the compliance side, depending on as required by the client, whether ensuring they are compliant with PCI requirements, HIPAA requirements, and GDPR requirements. So that's one side of the equation, ensuring that you have top-notch setup there. And then the other side is the speed of onboarding, as I mentioned. So ensuring the agent is on and offboarded as their availability change, as the needs of the end client change. So just delivering the ability to ramp up quickly, and also the ability to remotely wipe all the software and data completely from the employee on device once they are not in work mode. So to me, the key message, the key challenge that you guys are Omni master so well is this execution. Like it's this the seamless execution, combining speed, going to green, or also enforcing high level security. Then you go into the topic of achieving how will an IT team achieve that level of control, and especially when it comes to potential issues around having admin rights or admin access to the employee personal machine. So in our view, in our experience, it's about the relationship between the gig worker and the operator, so the company that's going to be managing them. Obviously, first and foremost, security is the number one concern, and it must work for both parties. Protecting sensitive data is number one thing, but also you need to be respectful of the user's rights and deliver that seamless onboarding experience for them. So it's a pleasurable, it's a secure but also positive experience across the board. And we found that some usual approaches in securing access that we see out there in the industry, they don't really secure the device itself. Some of them include, as I think, Courtney, you mentioned, VPNs, antiviruses, VDI, even in some solutions that include an OS in a USB stick. All that doesn't really secure the device itself. And so IT teams, they don't have admin rights to enforce any security posture. So what we did at Thinscale is we developed a product called Secure Remote Worker, which solves this device level security issue, and ended up being like a perfect match for the BYOD, the gig worker use case, which is where we collaborate with Omni, which effectively it's a local install agent that only requires the agent when they start working, they just activate the work mode. Once work mode is activated, the IT team will be able to create that secure environment and operate and create the security posture that's required by the end user only during that window. And that's important because during that window, during that work window, only the approved apps will function. Even if there is any pre-existing, pre-installed malware, for example, keyloggers and screen scrapers, they will not run on that device. Any data that's created during that secure session is encrypted and saved on an inaccessible drive. You have the ability to block screenshotting, to block connecting to printers, as Nick mentioned earlier, from USB device storage devices. You can enforce multi-factor authentication, enforce updates and ship patches using the software. And you can even lock access to corporate resources if the user isn't using a certain version of the operating system. So all this without impacting the worker's personal usage of their device or infringing on their own data rights. Because again, once the work mode is enabled, that's a separate profile, that's a separate session that's completely corporate, locked down and managed by the IT team. So I think that's, I'll leave it there for now, Courtney, in terms of the main things that we see in Gig CX and the role we play in enabling that model for Omni.
Excellent. I mean, all great points, and it's true. I mean, the BYO, Thinscale and the secure remote worker and a BYOD environment has been a game changer because it really does bring a level of security and control, access control that we haven't had in the past. And Nick, do you want to elaborate on kind of any of that or how we use it specifically?
Yeah, no, I thanks, Fernando. That was a great kind of overview of that piece. But the piece that the part of it that I really appreciate and in my role is that we have a consistent desktop that we manage, that the end user's on every time. We update it remotely. We can update that real time across the entire enterprise at the same time. We get consistent delivery and the speed at which we can do that versus shipping out a PC or shipping out a USB drive and trying to recover those devices. We don't do any of that, and we can do it in a fraction of the time. So our speed to start and deliver services is drastically reduced by having a tool like that. And then the other point I really liked in that is that throughout that process, I talked about a lot of the controls leading up to getting somebody onboarded and into the environment, but Thinscale enables that real-time monitoring from once they go into that work mode. Once that session started, then we have a whole other set of tools that perform real-time monitoring. We tie, as Fernando said, the MFA is tied to that. We do location validation and other, it integrates with a lot of our other tool sets already. So the data we're getting from Thinscale plus some of our other tools there give us a real-time view of where people are at with performance. We got a holistic view of our virtual ecosystem of workers real time. So.
Well, and it allows us we can do biometric verifications. We can do, different types of access, whether it's schedule-based access or, location-based access prevention, lots of different
Absolutely.
ways that we can then manage whether or not someone has access to those tools on a real-time automated basis.
That's really cool. And also there's, even as Nick was mentioning earlier when in his opening remarks, even when you're onboarding and when you're hiring new agents, it's called a validation tool. It's a tool that takes a snapshot of the candidate's device and network readiness. So you can get that vetting happen even before that person is even called for an interview as a criteria. So to ensure that person is equipped to work to the standards that you guys require, because that's the standard that your end users are going to be requesting. So all that we can do remotely and support. Again, it's easier said than done, delivering speed of execution with the utmost security standards. And I think you guys did so well. And we're happy to be part of that journey and help you guys in any way we can. But I think that's a really strong point in the offering, which is like marrying that speed of execution with a security posture that cannot be compromised, because it's the highest standards that we hold ourselves to and your clients as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Well, it looks like we have a question from Kirk around, is there any masking of PII if a customer provides that without being asked for it? So are there, and Nick, maybe you can even answer this out of the box a little bit, so to speak, but is there a way that we can mask PII, based on, let's say, a naming convention or other things that would come through that would then automatically generate a masking scenario?
Yeah, so we have several customers of ours that bring tools to the table. So if it's consistent, if it's coming in from a certain in a certain application, or certain tools and things where it comes in on, yes, we can. There's ways we can do that. We can prevent it if they're using, let's say they want to use a chat platform and we provide it. We have tools in there to restrict, mask any type of PII or PHI data and things like that. Our call recording has a masking system for things like that as well. To the point is, worst case, everything's always encrypted. It's always, and the typical session is wiped at the end of that session. So we're booting from when we're launching that virtual desktop out of Secure Remote Worker, if they're in that environment, that desktop disappears after that session. It's wiped, and there's no data is left after that session, and it boots from a clean image every time. So there's ways to control it and restrict it, Kirk. The specifics are hard and not knowing exactly where it's coming from, but there are a lot of tools out there, and a lot of times we have clients to come to us with those masking tools exist in their tool, and that's part of the amazing flexibility of this platform that we've built, is that we can turn on and off different settings, options, controls. We build a platform specific to the client need with the security controls in place that they require. We kind of deny all access to everything by default, and then we allow specifically what's needed. And it's that multi-layered kind of defense in depth approach to how we secure things. So I hope that mostly answers your question there.
Just thinking from the delivery of GigCX in a secure environment. So one of the keys that we find to making Gig CX work is to have an alignment between departments. So one good example that I mentioned earlier is the hiring process. So the first step is assessing whether a candidate has a suitable device and connectivity. And I mentioned the validation tool is one of the things that we have to provide that snapshot. So there's a broader theme there, which is the alignment between different departments, from talent acquisition to operations to IT. And this is something that we see over and over again, dealing with our customers, and especially with you guys, that when it's done well and it's coordinated, there's that buy-in from the key departments. That speed of execution is just so much better, and that you see the better experience across the board, from the agent experience, from your guys' experience as well, and the end user at the end of the line. So I think that's another point that I wanted to make, which I see this being done really well in your case, is that alignment between the departments for the deployment.
Yeah, I definitely. It's definitely a key piece of how we can do it efficiently and effectively, from an opportunity coming up to being able to get agents in and working is a quick process, but it is because of that seamless kind of integration between groups. We hand data back and forth along the process, the decisioning process of bringing them in. Some of it's IT, some of it's the validation tool on the Thinscale side. Some of it is, then all the other tools in our ecosystem of, Courtney said LexisNexis, and some of this other data gathering pieces that we do. It comes from several different places and several different tools, and we incorporate all that data into one spot for that initial sourcing process of getting people on board. So it does make it quicker, and it definitely makes it more efficient to go from that first stage into a production environment.
And looks like, Nick, we've got a follow-on question to kind of what you said. How do you consolidate and share that data between departments?
So we, depending on the stage of where that data is at, it's owned by each department during their phase of that process. But the data is centralized. It's in a central SQL database, effectively, where we can track all of those pieces, because that is the important piece. It's making sure that the person that signs up, and then the person that provides an ID, then we take a selfie to make sure that we do a liveness test and validation, and then we use a biometric test to match the person in the selfie to the ID, and then we validate that the ID is valid, and then we take that data and we pass it on for a background check. So it's got to be all contained together, because we rely on various data points throughout that process. And we're validating each of those data points. So they provide their address when we're validating that they are actually in the location they say they're in. We have multiple tools. We do, through the background check process, through the LexisNexis process, we check. And then when we actually watch where they log in from, we get their IP back. Their MFA also correlates locations. So we're constantly using all those data points as part of that ongoing security model that we're evaluating against at all times. So,
and I would just add to that to say this, for us, we've built what we call the Omniverse, and the Omniverse is really kind of our data-driven approach to how we deliver services to our clients. And what Nick is describing is part of the fundamental backbone of how we deliver, consistent, reliable, secure services to our clients. And we've got a whole, set of business rules kind of in what we call our intelligent connected workplace that is built around these things and many other things, right? So very similarly to, we're validating and we're throwing flags when someone's data isn't matching as they move down kind of the life cycle process, or if they log in and there's something doesn't match, right? It throws a flag, and we can that's either addressed automatically through a business rule, or something we go, we can send to someone to validate immediately. And then we can do the same things with quality, CSAT, real-time management, all of these other pieces of the business as well that flow into our data warehouse and have business rules built around them that really give us an opportunity to to automate a lot of these delivery functions to make sure that they happen exactly as expected and can be addressed either automatically or very quickly, depending on the scenario. Well, excellent. Any closing comments or final questions from anyone? All right, well, I'll take that as a no. And thank you so much for everyone's time today. Really appreciate it. If you've got follow-up questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Always happy to deep dive into any of these things we talked about today, certainly. And then as Shelby mentioned, we'll have a recording out to everyone. Let's just say tomorrow, if earlier, great. But certainly by tomorrow. So really appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you for joining. And we will see you on the next one.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.